The meeting room on Station Kepler 7 was cold and quiet. Commander Zethkar sat across from journalist Nimra, his blue-scaled hands folded on the metal table. The old alien warrior had many scars on his face and arms. His large black eyes looked tired and worried. Nimra turned on her recording device. "Thank you for speaking with me today, Commander. Our readers want to know about the human coalition war that ended 3 years ago." Zethkar nodded slowly. "I commanded the 7th Valerian Fleet during that war. I fought against the humans in many battles." His voice was deep and rough. "Tell me about human fighting tactics," Nimra said. "Were they skilled warriors?" The commander was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his hands. "Skilled? Yes. But that is not what made them dangerous." "What do you mean?" Zethkar lifted his head. "Let me tell you about Captain Jake Morrison of the ship called Defiant. I first met him in battle near the Titan system." The alien warrior's eyes grew distant as he remembered. "Morrison's ship was badly damaged. We had hit it with 17 different weapons. There were holes in the hull. Half his crew was dead. Any normal captain would surrender or retreat. But he didn't. No, he kept fighting. For 3 hours, his broken ship held off my entire assault wing. 24 of our best warships and 1 damaged human vessel kept us back." Zethkar shook his head. But that was not the strange part. Nimra leaned forward. "What was strange? While Morrison was fighting us, he was also saving lives. His ship was sending out rescue pods to collect survivors from destroyed vessels, both human and alien survivors." The commander's voice became quieter. "He was trying to kill us and save us at the same time." "That doesn't make sense," Nimra said. "No, it doesn't. But I watched it happen. Morrison's ship was falling apart. He was bleeding from his wounds. His bridge was on fire. But he kept sending messages to our medical ships telling them where to find injured aliens floating in space." Zethkar stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars filled the black sky. "After the battle, we captured some of Morrison's crew. I spoke with them. They told me their captain had ordered them to share their medical supplies with alien prisoners, even though they needed those supplies for themselves." "Why would they do that?" The alien commander turned back to face her. "That is what I asked them. Do you know what they said?" Nimra waited. "They said it was the right thing to do, not because it would help them win, not because it would save their lives, just because it was right." Zethkar sat down again. "I have fought wars for over 40 years. I have never heard anything like that before." "What happened to Captain Morrison?" "His ship was destroyed in the end. But before it exploded, he sent one final message. Not to his fleet command, not to his government. He sent medical data to our ships showing us how to treat human injuries. He gave us information to help save the lives of our own soldiers." Nimra made notes on her tablet. "That is unusual behavior for a warrior." "Unusual?" Zethkar laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "It was impossible. In my species, we fight to survive. We kill to protect our own. We do not help our enemies. That is the way of war." "But humans are different?" "Humans are wrong," the commander said quietly. "They break every rule of nature, every law of survival." The journalist looked confused. "I don't understand." Zethkar leaned forward. "Morrison was not special. He was not the only one. I fought against hundreds of human soldiers and officers. They all acted the same way." "How so?" "In the Battle of Centauri Prime, I watched human soldiers charge into our lines. They fought like demons. They killed many of my troops. But when the fighting stopped, those same soldiers were giving water to our wounded. They were calling for medical help for aliens who had been trying to kill them minutes before." The alien commander's voice grew stronger. "I saw human medic Lucy Grant crawl across a battlefield under heavy fire. She was not rescuing her own people. She was trying to save a Valerian soldier who had been shooting at her all day. Did she succeed? Yes. She saved him, and when he recovered, he told me something that still keeps me awake at night." Zethkar paused. He said the human medic smiled at him while she worked. She smiled while saving the life of her enemy. Nimra put down her stylus. That is disturbing. You begin to understand, Zethkar said. But there is more. Much more. The commander stood up again and began pacing. In the siege of Alpha Station, human forces were surrounded. They had no food, no water, no hope of rescue. Standard military doctrine says they should have surrendered to save lives. But they didn't. They fought for 6 weeks. But while they fought, they were also taking care of alien civilians who were trapped on the station. Human soldiers were giving their own food to alien children. They were using their medical supplies to treat alien injuries. Nimra shook her head. That makes no tactical sense. Exactly, it makes no sense, but they did it anyway. Zethkar stopped pacing and looked directly at her. When we finally took the station, we found something that terrified us. What? The humans had been keeping detailed records of every alien on the station. Names, medical conditions, family members. They wanted to make sure we would take proper care of the aliens after the humans were gone. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Nimra asked, "What happened to the human defenders?" They all died. Every single one. But before they died, they made sure every alien civilian was safe and cared for. Zethkar's voice was barely a whisper. They chose to die for beings they had never met before. Beings from species they were at war with. That is, Nimra struggled for words. Insane, Zethkar finished. By every measure of logic and survival, it was insane. But they did it anyway. The alien commander sat down heavily. Do you know what the worst part is? What? It worked. After Alpha Station, many of my soldiers began to question why we were fighting. They saw what the humans had done, and they began to wonder if we were wrong to make war on such beings. Nimra looked at her notes. So the humans won through compassion? No, Zethkar said firmly. They won through impossibility. They won by being something that should not exist. Something that breaks every rule of nature and war. What do you mean? The commander looked out the window again. I mean that humans are not just another species. They are something new. Something that changes everything they touch, even their enemies. Is that why the war ended? Zethkar nodded slowly. The war ended because we realized something terrible. We realized that the longer we fought humans, the more we became like them, and we were not sure the galaxy was ready for that. The interview room fell silent. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, unchanged by the words spoken in that small room. But Nimra knew that she had heard something important. Something that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Commander, she said finally, what do you think will happen now? Zethkar turned to look at her one last time. I think we are all about to find out what it means to be human, and I am not sure any of us are prepared for that. Nimra looked at her notes from the first session. 3 days had passed since her initial interview with Commander Zethkar. The alien warrior had agreed to speak with her again, but he seemed even more troubled than before. They met in the same room on Station Kepler 7. This time Zethkar brought a datapad with him. His scaled hands shook slightly as he placed it on the table. You said you wanted to know more, the commander began without greeting. I will tell you about Proxima Station, but I warn you, this story is worse than the last one. Nimra activated her recorder. What happened at Proxima Station? Zethkar touched his datapad. A holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a massive space station floating among the stars. Proxima Station was a research facility. It held important technology that both sides needed to win the war. How important? Jump gate technology. Whoever controlled it could move their fleets across the galaxy in days instead of months. The commander pointed to the image. My fleet, along with forces from 5 other species, surrounded the station. We had over 200 ships. The humans had maybe 50 people inside. Nimra studied the hologram. The station looked huge, but she could see it was heavily damaged. What was your plan? Simple. We would wait until they ran out of food and air. Then they would surrender. Zethkar made the image spin slowly. According to our intelligence, they had supplies for 2 weeks at most. But the siege lasted longer. 3 months, the commander said quietly. 3 months of the most disturbing warfare I have ever witnessed. Nimra leaned forward. What made it disturbing? Zethkar closed his eyes for a moment. The humans were led by Major Lisa Hamilton and Lieutenant Colonel Ron Baker. I studied their files. They were good soldiers, but nothing special. Just regular humans. What did they do? They turned our siege into a rescue mission. The alien's voice became strained. While we were attacking them, trying to take the station, they were evacuating alien civilians. What alien civilians? Researchers and their families from 6 different species. Scientists who had been working on the station when the war started. Zethkar opened his eyes and looked at Nimra. The humans could have used them as hostages. They could have demanded safe passage in exchange for alien lives. But they didn't. No. They used their own shuttles, their own fuel, their own supplies, to get the aliens to safety. Every night while we were sleeping, human soldiers would sneak out of the station, not to attack us, not to sabotage our ships. They were delivering alien children to our medical vessels. Nimra made notes quickly. That doesn't sound like military strategy. It wasn't. It was suicide. Zethkar touched his data pad again. The image changed to show the inside of the station. I have recordings from our surveillance drones. Do you want to see what the humans were doing inside? Show me. The hologram displayed a corridor inside Proxima Station. Human soldiers were walking back and forth carrying supplies. But they were not preparing for battle. They were setting up a hospital. This is from week 4 of the siege, Zethkar explained. The humans had captured some of our soldiers in earlier attacks. Look what they did with the prisoners. Nimra watched as human medics treated wounded aliens. The aliens were lying on human medical beds, receiving human medicine, being cared for by human doctors. Sergeant Amy Foster was in charge of the medical bay, the commander continued. She gave up her own blood to save a Kethran soldier who had been trying to kill her the day before. Why would she do that? I asked her that same question when we finally took the station. Zethkar paused the recording. She said the alien soldier was young and had a family. She said it was her duty to help him. Her duty to help an enemy. That is what she said. According to Foster, humans have a duty to protect all life, not just human life. The commander shook his head. It makes no sense. Nimra looked at the frozen image. What happened to the alien prisoners? That is the strangest part. The humans began releasing them. Releasing them during a siege? Yes, but not without conditions. Zethkar started the recording again. They would only release prisoners who promised to carry messages to our fleet. Commanders. Messages asking us to accept more evacuated alien civilians. The hologram showed human soldiers escorting alien prisoners to the station's docking bay. The aliens were carrying data pads and small packages. What was in the packages? Nimra asked. Medicine, food, personal letters from aliens on the station to their families in our fleet. Zethkar's voice grew softer. The humans were using prisoner exchanges to deliver mail. That is unusual. It gets worse. In week 8, our long-range scanners detected something that made no sense. Human soldiers were leaving the station every night, not to attack us, but to deliver supplies to our own ships. Nimra looked up from her notes. They were helping their enemies? Lieutenant Colonel Baker had learned that one of our medical ships was running low on plasma for treating wounded soldiers, so he sent Sergeant Foster and 3 other humans to deliver human medical plasma to our ship. How did they get through your defenses? They didn't try to sneak past us. They sent us a message first asking permission to deliver medical supplies. Zethkar laughed, but it sounded bitter. They asked their enemies for permission to help them. What did you do? We let them come. What else could we do? They were risking their lives to save our soldiers. The commander touched his datapad again. Here is the recording from that night. The hologram showed a small human shuttle approaching a large alien medical ship. Nimra could see human soldiers in spacesuits carrying containers of medical supplies. Sergeant Foster spent 6 hours on our medical ship, teaching our doctors how to use human plasma treatment techniques. She worked alongside alien medics to save the lives of soldiers who had been shooting at her friends. What did your soldiers think about this? Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. Many of them began to refuse orders to attack the station. They said it was wrong to fight people who were trying to help us. Did that cause problems for your command? Problems? It caused a crisis. By week 10, half of my fleet was questioning why we were fighting at all. The commander deactivated the hologram. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were changing the rules of war itself. How did the siege end? In the most human way possible. Zethkar picked up his datapad and held it tightly. In week 12, we detected a massive energy buildup in the station's main computer core. We thought they were preparing some kind of weapon. Were they? No. They were transmitting data. All of their research files, all of their military secrets, all of their technology blueprints. They sent everything to every ship in the system. Human ships and alien ships alike. Nimra stopped writing. They gave their secrets to their enemies? Not just their enemies. They sent the data to neutral planets, to university libraries, to anyone who could receive it. Zethkar's hands were shaking now. Major Hamilton's final message said they wanted to make sure the knowledge would survive, even if they did not. What happened to the humans? When we finally entered the station, we found them in the main hall. All 47 remaining humans. They were sitting in a circle, sharing their last food rations with the few alien civilians who had refused to be evacuated. They were still taking care of aliens? Until the very end. Major Hamilton had organized all the station's supplies for us. Food, medicine, equipment, everything was labeled and ready for distribution to both human and alien survivors. The room was silent for several minutes. Finally, Nimra asked, "How did this make you feel?" Zethkar looked at her with his large black eyes. Terrified. The humans had not just lost the battle. They had made us question everything we believed about war, about survival, about what it means to be a warrior. What do you mean? I mean that after Proxima Station, my soldiers were no longer the same. They had seen what humans could do, and they wanted to be like them. They wanted to be better than they were. And that frightened you? Yes, the commander said simply. Because if humans could make us want to be better, what else could they make us become? A week passed before Nimra met with Commander Zethkar again. This time the alien warrior looked even more tired. His scales had lost some of their blue color, and his hands shook constantly. "Are you well, Commander?" Nimra asked as she set up her recording equipment. "No," Zethkar replied honestly. "Talking about these events brings back memories I have tried to forget. But you need to hear about Wolf 359. It was the largest battle of the war." Nimra activated her recorder. "Tell me what happened." Zethkar pulled out his datapad, but he did not turn it on immediately. Wolf 359 was supposed to end the war. We brought together the largest fleet ever assembled. 312 ships from 6 different species. The humans had only 40 vessels. Those odds seem impossible for the humans. They were impossible. Admiral Kate Douglas commanded the human fleet. She was outnumbered 8-1. Any reasonable commander would have retreated or surrendered. The commander finally activated his datapad. But Admiral Douglas was human. The hologram showed a massive space battle. Hundreds of ships filled the darkness, their weapons lighting up the void like deadly fireworks. In the center, a much smaller group of human ships fought desperately. The battle lasted 18 hours, Zethkar continued. But what happened during those 18 hours changed everything I believed about warfare. What made it different? The humans did not fight like any species I have ever encountered. Watch this. The commander pointed to one section of the holographic battle. A human ship was surrounded by 6 alien vessels, all firing at once. That is the UES Vigilant, commanded by Commodore Steve Parker. His ship was hit 17 times in the first hour. Half his crew was dead. His engines were failing. Nimra watched as the human ship spun helplessly, pieces of hull breaking away from weapon impacts. What did Parker do? Something that made no sense. Instead of trying to escape or fight back, he turned his ship into a hospital. A hospital? During battle? Yes. Parker began sending out rescue shuttles to collect wounded soldiers from destroyed ships, both human and alien soldiers. The hologram zoomed in to show small shuttles moving between the wreckage, collecting floating bodies. But he was still being attacked? That is the impossible part. While coalition forces were shooting at the vigilant, Parker was broadcasting medical emergency procedures to our ships. He was telling our doctors how to treat battle injuries. Nimra paused her note-taking. He was helping his enemies while they were trying to kill him? Exactly. And it gets worse. Zethkar changed the holographic view. Parker's medical bay became a joint treatment center. Human doctors and alien doctors worked side by side, treating wounded from both fleets. The image showed the inside of the human ship. Nimra could see humans and aliens lying on medical beds next to each other. Human medics were treating alien soldiers, while captured alien medics helped treat human wounded. How was this possible during a battle? Parker sent a message to all fleet commanders on both sides. He declared his ship a neutral medical zone and asked everyone to respect it. Zethkar shook his head. And somehow, it worked. You stopped shooting at his ship? Not officially. But many of our captains began aiming their weapons away from the vigilant. They could not bring themselves to destroy a ship that was saving their own crew members. Nimra looked at the battle scene. What about the other human ships? They all began doing the same thing. While fighting for their lives, they were also coordinating rescue operations for enemy survivors. The commander changed the view again. Look at this recording from the UES Phoenix. The hologram showed another human ship, badly damaged but still fighting. Small shuttles were flying between the Phoenix and nearby alien vessels. Captain Bill Rogers of the Phoenix was coordinating with a Kethran medical ship to share surgical equipment. While the Kethran ship was shooting at him, Rogers was sending them human medical supplies. That is insane. Yes. But Rogers was not finished. When the Kethran medical ship was hit by weapons fire from another human vessel, Rogers ordered his own ships to stop shooting and protect the alien medical ship. Nimra put down her stylus. A human captain protected an enemy medical ship? Rogers formed a defensive line with 3 human destroyers to shield the Kethran hospital ship while it evacuated wounded aliens. Zethkar's voice became quieter. 47 human soldiers died protecting that alien medical ship. What happened to Captain Rogers? His ship was destroyed 6 hours later, but before he died, Rogers transmitted the complete medical records of every patient on the Kethran ship to their home fleet. He wanted to make sure the alien families would know what happened to their wounded relatives. The room was silent except for the humming of the station's life support systems. Finally, Nimra asked, "What about Admiral Douglas?" Zethkar's hands began shaking more violently. Admiral Douglas, she was the worst of all. Worst how? Because she made the choice that ended the battle. And it was a choice that should have been impossible for any living being to make. The commander changed the holographic display one more time. It showed the final hour of the battle. Most of the human ships were destroyed or disabled. Only 12 human vessels remained, all of them heavily damaged. Admiral Douglas was aboard the UES Liberty. Her ship was falling apart. She had maybe 100 crew members left alive out of 5,000 who started the battle. Nimra watched as the remaining human ships formed a tight circle, surrounded by over 200 alien vessels. This was the moment when Admiral Douglas could have made her final attack. She could have tried to take as many of us with her as possible. That is what any normal commander would do. But she didn't? No. She did something that still gives me nightmares. Zethkar paused the recording. Douglas ordered her entire remaining fleet to form a protective barrier around damaged coalition ships. She protected her enemies? She used human ships as shields to protect alien vessels, while evacuation procedures were carried out. The commander's voice was barely a whisper. Douglas sacrificed her entire fleet to save the lives of soldiers who had been trying to kill her all day. Nimra stared at the frozen hologram. Why would she do that? That is what I asked her before she died. The Liberty was burning around her. Her bridge was full of smoke. Half her face was burned from weapons fire. But she smiled when I asked her that question. She smiled? Yes. And do you know what she said? Nimra waited. She said it was her job to protect people, all people, not just humans. Zethkar closed his eyes. Admiral Douglas died believing that her enemy soldiers were just as important as her own crew. What was her final order? She did not give a military order. Her last transmission was to a coalition medical officer, asking him to take special care of the human-alien hybrid child of one of her crew members who had married an alien. She was worried about a child? Douglas spent her final moments making sure that one mixed-species child would be properly cared for after her death. Not coordinating attacks, not planning revenge, just protecting one child. The hologram disappeared, leaving the room in normal lighting. Zethkar sat quietly for several minutes before speaking again. We won the Battle of Wolf 359. We destroyed 39 of the 40 human ships. Over 4,000 human soldiers died that day. But we stopped calling it a victory. How? Can you celebrate defeating an enemy who died protecting your own people? The commander looked directly at Nimra. How can you feel proud of killing soldiers who used their last moments to save alien children? What effect did this have on your forces? Catastrophic. After Wolf 359, thousands of coalition soldiers requested transfers to non-combat positions. Many others refused to fight humans at all. Zethkar's voice grew stronger. We had won the largest battle of the war, but we were losing the war itself. Because of human behavior? Because human behavior was changing us, making us question everything we thought we knew about war, about survival, about what it means to be alive in this galaxy. Nimra made her final notes of the session. Commander, how did the war actually end? Zethkar stood up slowly, his old joints creaking. That is a story for tomorrow. But I will tell you this much. The war did not end because we defeated the humans. It ended because we realized something terrible about what the humans were doing to us. What were they doing? The alien commander walked to the door, then turned back one final time. They were making us human, and we were not sure we wanted to stop them. Commander Zethkar arrived for the final interview session looking different. His blue scales seemed darker, and his large black eyes held a strange mixture of fear and wonder. Nimra noticed he carried no datapad this time. No recordings today? She asked as they sat down. No, Zethkar replied. What I am about to tell you is not in any official record. Some truths are too dangerous to store in computers. Nimra activated her recorder. You said the war ended because humans were making you human. What did you mean? The commander was quiet for a long time. He stared at his hands, then looked up at the ceiling, then finally met her eyes. Do you know how species evolve, Nimra? Through natural selection. Survival of the fittest. Exactly. Every species in the galaxy evolved from either predators or prey. My people, the Valerians, evolved from hunters. We developed sharp claws, strong muscles, and pack tactics to catch our food. That makes sense. The Kethrans evolved from prey, animals. They developed speed, camouflage, and group cooperation to escape from predators. Every species follows these patterns. Nimra made notes. Where do humans fit in this pattern? Zethkar's hands began to shake again. That is the problem. Humans do not fit any pattern. They break every rule of evolution. How so? After we captured human soldiers, our scientists studied them. We examined their bodies, their brains, their genetic codes. We wanted to understand what made them so dangerous in battle. What did you find? Humans evolved as both predators and prey at the same time. But that should be impossible. No species can be both hunter and hunted. Evolution does not work that way. Nimra looked confused. But humans obviously exist, so how is it impossible? Because humans developed something that no other species has ever developed. They developed the ability to choose which one to be in any given moment. Choose? Yes. When humans fought alongside their allies, like Commander Pete Walsh of the Human Centauri Joint Task Force, they became perfect pack hunters. They coordinated attacks with an efficiency that terrified us. They moved like one organism with many bodies. The commander stood up and began pacing. But when those same humans encountered defeated enemies, they instantly became protectors. The same soldiers who had been killing with deadly precision were suddenly risking their lives to save the aliens they had just been fighting. You make it sound like they were switching personalities. That is exactly what they were doing, but not because of mental illness or training. They were overriding millions of years of evolutionary programming through pure force of will. Nimra put down her stylus. That sounds impossible. It is impossible, but humans do it anyway. Zethkar stopped pacing and sat down again. Do you remember Captain Nancy Hayes, who I mentioned in our first interview? No, you didn't mention her before. I meant to. Hayes commanded a human patrol ship during the battle for the Outer Rim. She encountered a group of surrendering Valerian civilians, families who had been caught in the war zone. What did she do? According to evolutionary logic, she should have either killed them as threats or ignored them to focus on survival. Instead, Hayes spent 3 days escorting the alien families to safety, using her own ship's fuel and food to keep them alive. That sounds like normal compassion. No, it was not normal. Our psychologists studied the recordings of Hayes's actions. They measured her brain activity during the escort mission. What did they find? Zethkar leaned forward. They found that Hayes was consciously suppressing her predator instincts and activating protective behaviors that normally only apply to offspring. She was rewiring her own brain in real time. That's disturbing. It gets worse. Hayes was not unique. Every human we studied showed the same ability. They could change their fundamental nature based on moral choice rather than survival need. Nimra felt a chill run down her spine. What does this mean for other species? It means humans represent a form of evolution that threatens the natural order of the galaxy. The commander's voice became very quiet. They are an evolutionary virus. A virus? Not in the biological sense, in the behavioral sense. Exposure to humans changes other species, makes them want to be like humans. How do you know this? Because it happened to us. After fighting humans for 2 years, our own soldiers began to display human-like behaviors. Zethkar stood up again and walked to the window. Valerian troops started risking their lives for enemy wounded. Kethran commanders began prioritizing civilian safety over military objectives. That doesn't sound like a bad thing. The commander turned around quickly. It is terrifying. For millions of years, species have survived by following evolutionary rules. Kill or be killed, protect your own kind. Destroy threats before they destroy you. And humans changed that? Humans proved those rules were not absolute. They showed that beings could choose to be better than their evolution demanded. Zethkar's voice grew louder. They proved that survival was not the most important thing in the universe. What is more important? According to humans, being worthy of survival. Nimra stared at the alien commander. Is that why the war ended? The war ended because Coalition Command realized what was happening to our forces. We were not just fighting humans anymore. We were becoming human ourselves. How did Command react to this? Panic. Complete panic. Zethkar returned to his seat. High Command called an emergency meeting of all Coalition leaders. They presented evidence that continued contact with humans was fundamentally altering the behavior patterns of multiple species. What kind of evidence? Statistical analysis showed that Coalition soldiers who had fought humans were 60% less likely to follow orders that resulted in civilian casualties. They were 40% more likely to risk their lives for non-military personnel. They were becoming more human. What did the Coalition leaders decide? Zethkar was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. They decided that humans were more dangerous than any weapon ever created. Not because they could destroy us, but because they could transform us. So they ended the war. They ended the war because they realized that victory over humans might cost us our identity as separate species. If we kept fighting humans, we might all become human eventually. Nimra looked at her notes. They seemed inadequate to capture what she was hearing. Commander, do you think the coalition made the right choice? I do not know. That is what keeps me awake at night. Zethkar met her eyes again. Since the war ended, I have watched coalition society change. Our soldiers are more compassionate. Our leaders consider civilian welfare in their decisions. Our scientists share research instead of hoarding it. Those sound like positive changes. They are, but they are human changes. We are becoming more human every day, and we do not know how to stop it. More importantly, we are not sure we want to stop it. What do you mean? I mean that humans showed us something we did not know existed. They showed us that we could choose to be better than we were, and now that we know it is possible, we cannot forget it. Nimra set down her recorder. What happens now? Now we find out if the galaxy is ready for a universe full of humans. Because that is what we are becoming. All of us. Zethkar stood up and walked toward the door. Humans did not conquer us with weapons. They conquered us with the possibility of being worthy of the lives we have been given. And that frightens you? The alien commander paused at the door. It terrifies me, because I am starting to think they were right. And if humans were right about warfare, about compassion, about sacrifice, what else might they be right about? Such as everything, Zethkar said simply. Everything we thought we knew about how to live in this universe. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor. But before leaving, he turned back one final time. Nimra, when you publish this story, be careful how you present it. Some species are not ready to learn that their entire way of life might be wrong. And humans are still out there, still changing everyone they meet. Is that a warning? No, the commander said quietly. It is a promise. Humans do not make war to destroy their enemies. They make war to save them, and they always succeed, even when they lose. The door closed, leaving Nimra alone with her recorder and the weight of the most important story ever told. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance, but now she knew that something had changed, among them forever. Humanity had shown the galaxy what was possible, and there was no going back.